After 12 years, my wife chose her soulmate who said money meant nothing. So I closed the credit lines and let him prove it. She did not even look up from her phone when she said it. Grant, I think I'm in love with someone else. That was how 12 years ended. Not with shouting, not with tears, not with some dramatic confession after hours of fighting. Just my wife Serena sitting on the couch in our house in Washington Park, Denver, scrolling on her phone like she was checking the weather and telling me she had fallen in love with another man. 12 years. 12 years of building a life together. A house in Wash Park. A financial planning practice I had grown from one desk and a laptop into a firm with 11 advisors. Her father's medical bills paid every month without question for 3 years straight. Her sister's wedding funded by us when her sister's fiancé lost his job. Her graduate school tuition covered by my business income when her scholarship fell through. 12 years of all of that, and Serena said it like she was reading from a grocery list. I did not yell, I did not throw anything, I did not cry. I just looked at her, sitting there on the couch we had picked out together at that furniture store on South Broadway. Her thumb was still moving across the screen. And I felt something settle inside my chest. It was not grief, it was not rage. It was something colder than either of those, something quieter, something deliberate. I said, "Tell me about him." And she did. For the next 40 minutes, Serena told me everything about a man named Caleb Frost. Caleb was a life coach and wellness entrepreneur she had met 3 months earlier at a retreat in Sedona, Arizona. She had gone there for a long weekend to decompress. She came home with a new collection of crystals, a few linen outfits, and apparently an entirely new life plan that did not include me. She said Caleb was different. Caleb was present. Caleb saw her. Caleb was not obsessed with financial spreadsheets and investment portfolios. Caleb was not always thinking about mortgages, insurance, taxes, accounts, and long-term planning. Caleb did not care about money. She actually said that to me. He doesn't care about money, Grant. He's genuine. He's not like you. And I smiled. Not because I was happy. Not because any part of it was funny. I smiled because in that exact moment, a very clear picture formed in my mind. If you have ever given everything to someone, if you have ever held a life together with your own hands, and then watched that person mistake your reliability for smallness, then you know the kind of smile I am talking about. It is the smile of a man who realizes the game is not over. It is just finally, honestly, begun. Before I go any further, if you are new here, subscribe, because what I am about to walk you through is not just my story. It is a masterclass in what happens when someone builds their entire life on another person's infrastructure, then tries to walk away from it like it was nothing. And tell me in the comments if you have ever been the one holding everything together while someone else went looking for something shinier. Because I know I am not the only one. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, because to understand what I did after that conversation on the couch, you need to understand how Serena and I got there. I met Serena Caldwell at a fundraiser in Lodo, lower downtown Denver, in the fall of 2011. I was 34 at the time. I was 3 years into building my financial advisory firm. I was still working 60-hour weeks, still taking calls at odd hours, still saying yes to meetings that barely made sense because I was trying to build something real from the ground up. But the business was finally starting to get traction. Serena was 29. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized events company downtown. And she had this way of commanding a room without seeming like she was trying to command it. She was confident, warm, quick with a laugh, the kind of laugh that made everyone around her feel like they had been invited into some private joke. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. We got married in a small ceremony at a venue outside Breckenridge. There was a mountain backdrop, 50 guests, and every detail was exactly what she had told me she wanted. Nothing too extravagant, nothing too cold or formal. Just close friends, family, good food, mountain air, and the feeling that we were starting something stable and beautiful. 4 months after the wedding, I bought our house in Washington Park. 3 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, walking distance to the lake. It was the neighborhood Serena had been pointing at since our first year together. Every time we drove through Wash Park, she would slow down and look at the houses like she was imagining an entire future inside them. So when the business was strong enough and the numbers made sense, I made it happen. I am not telling you this to catalog my sacrifices. I am telling you this because it matters for what came later. When someone decides to leave, they often find a way to rewrite history. Everything you did becomes either invisible or evidence against you. The house is no longer romantic. It becomes suffocating. The financial stability is no longer security. It becomes control. The reliability is no longer love. It becomes emotional unavailability. The same qualities that made you safe suddenly become the reasons they say they have to escape. Serena started rewriting our story, slowly, about 18 months before that couch conversation. I can see it clearly now. Hindsight has a cruel way of sharpening the things you missed while they were happening. At the time, I kept explaining it away. She started going to a yoga studio on Colfax Avenue 3 mornings a week. That seemed healthy. Good for her. Then she started spending more time with a new group of friends I had never met. She described them as people who were more aligned with her energy. Then she started reading books about authentic living and leaving them face down on the nightstand like they were statements. She stopped asking about my clients. She stopped asking about the business. She stopped asking about the things that had been part of our shared conversation for almost a decade. Then Sedona happened. She left for that long weekend saying she needed to decompress. She had been tense for months. I thought the retreat might help. I thought some space, some sun, some desert air might bring her back to herself. Instead, she came back with sunburned shoulders, 3 new linen outfits, and a look in her eyes that told me before she said a single word that something had shifted. I just did not know yet how far that shift had gone. For the next 3 months, after Sedona, Serena was different, not absent. That is the strange part. In some ways, she was more present than she had been before, more conversational, more affectionate, more attentive in little bursts that felt almost rehearsed. I understand now that it was guilt. It was the affection of someone preparing to leave, someone trying to make peace with herself before doing the thing she had already decided to do. Then, on a Tuesday night in late October, she sat down on the couch, picked up her phone, and said, "Grant, I think I'm in love with someone else." I asked about Caleb Frost, calmly. I listened. I asked follow-up questions the way I would in a client meeting when someone gives me information I need to understand before I respond. Where did he live? Boulder? What did he actually do? Coaching and retreats, mostly online. How long had this been going on? "We haven't done anything physical," she said. "We talk every day. Every day. For 3 months." I did that math in real time and kept my face completely still. She said she did not want to hurt me. She said she would always love me. She said maybe we had grown in different directions. She said she felt like she was finally discovering who she really was. I nodded. Then I said I needed some time to think. She looked almost disappointed, like she had expected more of a reaction, like she had been bracing for an explosion, and when it did not come, she did not know what to do with the silence. I went to my home office, closed the door, and sat at my desk for about 45 minutes, thinking. I am a financial advisor. My entire profession is built on one skill: seeing the full picture before making a move. You do not react to market volatility. You do not make emotional decisions with other people's futures. You look at the data. You identify the exposure. Then you take methodical action. That night, my marriage became a balance sheet. Not emotionally. Emotionally, I still had not caught up. But practically, structurally, I understood what had to happen. I had been the primary income earner for our entire marriage. My business generated the majority of our household income. The house was mortgaged in both names, but I had made every payment. Serena's father, Raymond Caldwell, had been battling kidney disease for 3 years. His dialysis treatments, his specialist appointments, his 3 hospitalizations, all of it moved through our joint insurance and then got supplemented by our joint accounts when insurance fell short. Serena's car was financed under a credit line connected to our shared financial infrastructure. Her personal credit cards, 2 of them, were linked to accounts I had co-signed. She wanted to leave me for a man in Boulder who did not care about money. So I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. I texted my attorney, Daniel Reyes, at his personal number. Daniel had been my business attorney for 6 years. He knew my finances better than most people know their own. My text said, "Need to talk tomorrow morning. Early. It's personal. Need to discuss separation of joint financial exposure. All of it." He responded within 10 minutes. "I'll be at the office at 7 o'clock. Come then." Then I texted my financial manager, Philip Donahue, who handled the accounts separate from my practice. "I need to review the structure of all joint accounts, credit lines, and shared obligations tomorrow afternoon." I set my phone face down on the desk. Then I went back to the living room, sat down across from Serena, and said, "I think we should talk to a couples counselor before either of us makes any decisions. I'd like to give this a real chance." She agreed. She looked relieved. The next morning, while Serena was at her yoga class, I was sitting across from Daniel Reyes on 17th Street, 2 blocks from the Denver Art Museum, going through everything. Daniel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me the way experienced attorneys look at you when they are calibrating how honest they need to be. "How serious is she?" he asked. "She talks to him every day. She told me she's in love with him." "I would call that serious." "And you want to protect yourself?" "I want to understand my full exposure before she decides to act. Because when she acts, I want to be ready." Daniel pulled out a legal pad. For the next 2 hours, we went through the inventory, the house joint ownership. My income had covered every mortgage payment and every property tax bill for 8 years. The credit accounts, 2 personal cards she carried in her name but co-signed by me, and connected to our joint operating account. Her father's medical coverage, Serena, was listed under my business health plan, and Raymond Caldwell's supplemental support came from a joint account Serena had full access to. Her car financed through a line of credit we had opened jointly for household expenses. Daniel was careful. "Here is what I want you to understand," he said. "You can't remove her from the property deed unilaterally while you are still married. That requires her consent, or a court order during divorce proceedings." "I know. But you can separate your credit exposure. You can close joint lines. You can restructure accounts. You can make sure that if she decides to run up debt over the next 6 months, you are not the one holding the bag." That is what I want to start today. Daniel made a list. On one side, he wrote down the things that required legal process, property, formal separation of assets, the pieces that would have to be handled during divorce proceedings if that was where we ended up. On the other side, he listed the things I could do immediately and within my rights. Close the joint credit line she relied on for day-to-day spending. Restructure the household account so that supplemental payments for her father's medical expenses were no longer automatic. Document meticulously every financial contribution I had made to our shared life over the past 12 years. Then Daniel paused. "One more thing," he said. "Her father's medical bills. Is she expecting that to continue?" "She has never once mentioned it as something she manages," I said. "It comes out of our account automatically. I'm not even sure she knows the amounts." Daniel wrote something on his pad and circled it. "That," he said, "is going to be a very interesting conversation." In the weeks that followed the couch conversation, Serena and I went to 3 sessions with a couples counselor named Dr. Patricia Wang. Her office was near Cherry Creek. I was not going because I believed it would save the marriage. I was going because I wanted Serena to believe I was trying. And I wanted a professional record of the state of our relationship that existed outside anything she or her attorney might later try to construct. Meanwhile, I was building my documentation with the same precision I bring to complex financial portfolios. Every mortgage payment organized by date. Every property tax payment. Every tax return. Every statement from the years I had covered her graduate school tuition. Every receipt tied to Raymond Caldwell's hospitalizations. The insurance statements, the credit card balances I had paid down when Serena overspent. 12 years of financial history cataloged and organized. At the same time, I listened. Not aggressively, not like a detective trying to trap her. I just paid attention in the way I probably should have been paying attention for the previous 18 months. As the weeks passed, Serena began talking about Caleb with less caution. She would mention things he had said, ideas he had about financial minimalism, living intentionally, letting go of systems that did not serve you. Caleb believed modern people were enslaved to their mortgages and their careers. Caleb thought real freedom meant living lightly, without the weight of accumulated obligations. Living lightly. I thought about Raymond Caldwell in his dialysis chair 3 times a week at the Swedish Medical Center on East Hampton. I thought about the monthly statements. I thought about what living lightly was going to look like for a man with kidney disease when his daughter's ex-husband was no longer subsidizing his treatment. I did not say any of that to Serena. I just listened. One afternoon, coming home from a session with Dr. Wang, Serena said something that crystallized everything. "I feel like you've always seen me as a dependent," she said, "like I'm part of your financial portfolio. Something to be managed." I pulled into the driveway of our house in Wash Park and turned off the engine. For a moment, I just looked at the house. The garden she had planted along the front walkway, the porch furniture we had bought together, the upstairs bedroom window where she had created her little reading nook. "I've never seen you as a dependent," I said. "I've seen you as my partner. But I think we may have very different ideas of what that means." She did not respond. She got out of the car and went inside. I sat in the driveway for a few more minutes. Then I texted Philip Donahue. "Begin the account restructuring we discussed. Start with the credit lines." Serena found out about the credit lines on a Thursday. She had gone to use one of the cards, the one she used for personal expenses: clothing, the yoga studio membership, the occasional dinner with friends. The card was declined. She called me while I was in a client meeting. I let it go to voicemail. When I called her back an hour later, her voice had a pitch I had not heard before. Not quite anger, something closer to shock. "My card was declined, Grant. What is happening?" "I closed the joint line it was connected to," I said. "I should have told you sooner. I'm restructuring our accounts, given where things are between us. It seemed irresponsible to leave everything open-ended." Silence. "You can't just do that." "I can, actually. Those accounts are in my name. You were an authorized user. I didn't remove you without cause, Serena. You told me 3 weeks ago that you are in love with another man." More silence. Then she asked the question I had been waiting for. "What about Dad's bills? What about the automatic payments?" There it is, I thought. Out loud, I said, "Those came out of the same account. The restructuring affects that too. I'll send you the documentation so you understand what changes are taking effect and when. I would suggest you talk to someone, maybe Caleb, about how to cover those going forward." I said that last part without sarcasm, not a single note of it. I meant it. I genuinely thought she should talk to the man who did not care about money, about the medical bills of the father-in-law he had never met, and see what his philosophy of intentional living had to say about that. She hung up. The next 72 hours were the most turbulent part of the entire experience. Serena called back that evening in a completely different tone, quieter, more careful, clearly having thought through her approach. She said she understood that I was hurt. She said she did not want this to get adversarial. She said she thought we could handle things civilly. I agreed. I told her I wanted to handle things civilly too. Then I told her I had already retained Daniel to help structure a fair separation of assets and that I recommended she do the same. She paused at that. "You already have a lawyer?" "I've had a lawyer for years, Serena. His name is Daniel Reyes. You've met him at company events." "That's not what I mean. When you told me you were in love with someone else, it seemed appropriate to have a conversation with him about what that meant for our financial situation. That is not adversarial. That is responsible." The following morning, her mother called me. Linda Caldwell was a warm, direct woman from Fort Collins, who had always treated me like a genuine member of the family. Linda and I had a real relationship. She had called me on my birthday every year for a decade. She had sent Christmas cards with handwritten notes. She had trusted me with family conversations that had nothing to do with Serena. This call was different. "Grant, I need to understand what's happening," she said. "Raymond's treatment. We got a notice that the automatic payments were suspended." "That's correct," I said. "I've begun restructuring our joint accounts, given the state of my marriage to Serena." There was a silence on the line. "I'm genuinely sorry about the timing, Linda," I continued. "I want to make sure Raymond is taken care of. I'll cover the current billing cycle while things are sorted out. But going forward, this will need to be handled differently." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Grant, how serious is this?" "I think that's a question you should ask your daughter." She said she would. She thanked me. She asked me to please keep her informed. I told her I would. I will never know exactly what Linda said to Serena after that phone call, but something shifted. Serena called me that afternoon and asked if we could meet in person somewhere neutral. I suggested the coffee shop on East Alameda near Washington Park, a place we had been going together for years. She agreed. We sat across from each other at a corner table with our coffees, and for the first time since the couch conversation, Serena looked like the woman I had actually married, not the version who had been coming home from yoga with someone else's energy, not the version who talked about Caleb Frost like he was enlightenment in human form. Just Serena, tired, pale, a little scared. I didn't understand how much you covered, she said. I know. Dad's bills, the insurance, She stopped. I didn't think about any of that. I know I said, again, that wasn't fair of me. I did not answer right away. I looked out the window towards South Downing Street, at the trees starting to drop their leaves, at people walking dogs and pushing strollers in that very Denver way people do on a weekday afternoon. Then I looked back at her. No, I said. It wasn't. She looked down. But I want to be honest with you, Serena, because I think we are past the point of being kind to each other in ways that are not true. You told me you were in love with another man. I cannot compete with a feeling. I do not want to compete with a feeling. But I also will not pretend the life we've built here just disappears because you found something exciting in Sedona. She stared at her coffee cup. What are you going to do? I'm going to protect what I've built, I said. Fairly and legally. Daniel is working on a full accounting of contributions during our marriage. When we get to the divorce process, and I think we both know we are heading there, I want it to be accurate, not punitive. Accurate. And Dad's bills? I already told Linda I would cover this cycle. After that, we need a different arrangement. He is not my father-in-law if we are not married, Serena. She flinched. Not because I said it cruelly. I did not. She flinched because it was true, and she had not let herself think it all the way through. Is Caleb going to help with that? I asked. I was genuinely curious. The look on her face told me everything. The man who did not care about money had not apparently offered to cover the dialysis bills of his girlfriend's ailing father. There is a detail I want to add here because it only makes sense in context. During one of our 3 sessions with Dr. Patricia Wang, she asked us both a question. What does financial security mean to each of you in this relationship? Serena answered first. She said financial security meant not having to worry. She said freedom from financial stress allowed her to focus on what actually mattered, her relationships, her growth, her well-being. Then Dr. Wang asked me. I said financial security meant responsibility. It meant building something stable enough that the people in your life did not have to worry. Dr. Wang nodded at both of us and wrote something down. I thought about that exchange for a long time afterward, because what Serena described not having to worry was real. She genuinely had not worried about money for 12 years, not once. Not about the mortgage, not about her father's bills, not about the credit card balances, not about the insurance premiums, not about the property taxes, not about the car financing, not a single time. And she had interpreted that freedom from worry as evidence that money did not matter. She had come to see financial stability as something that was simply there, ambient, like air, not something being actively maintained by another person, not something requiring constant attention, discipline, planning, and work. That is not exactly a character flaw. It is a blind spot. But it is a blind spot that costs the person maintaining the system very dearly when the relationship ends, because the person benefiting from the system often cannot understand why the resources are changing. I want to pause here and say something clearly. I have told this story to a few close friends over the past 2 years, and one of the most common reactions is, did you feel guilty? Were you trying to punish her? The honest answer is no. And I want to explain why. Serena was not a bad person. She was a person who had slowly, and then all at once, decided that the life we built together was not the life she wanted anymore. That is a human thing. People change. People grow. Sometimes they grow in directions that no longer align. I can accept that. What I could not accept, and what I do not think anyone should accept, is the version of events where Serena gets to walk away from a marriage while keeping full access to the financial resources I built, all while dismantling the very life those resources existed to support. She wanted to leave. Fine. But leaving meant leaving. It did not mean leaving while I kept every financial door open. It did not mean leaving while I continued paying for her life, her father's life, her personal expenses, her lifestyle, her comfort, and her freedom to talk every day to a man in Boulder who did not care about money. The restructuring I did was not punishment. It was clarity. It was the honest financial picture of what a marriage ending actually looks like when everyone stops pretending everything is fine. And in some ways, this is the part that surprised me. It may have been the most loving thing I did in the entire process. Because the illusion was over. The pretending was over. And when the pretending stopped, Serena had to look at the real situation with real numbers and make real decisions. Not retreat decisions, not Sedona decisions, real ones. The divorce proceedings took 8 months. Daniel was thorough. The accounting of my contributions to the marriage was extensive and well documented. Mortgage payments, tuition reimbursements, medical expense coverage, business income that had funded our entire lifestyle, every major payment, every major account, every pattern. Serena's attorney was a woman named Karen Diaz. Her office was near the Capitol building. She was competent and I respected her, but she was working with a weaker hand. Colorado is an equitable distribution state. That does not mean everything is automatically split equally. It means assets are divided fairly, taking into account each spouse's contributions and the circumstances of the marriage. The documentation Daniel and I had built gave us a strong basis to argue that my financial contributions had significantly outweighed Serena's, and that the house in particular needed to be handled accordingly. We settled outside of court. Serena would keep the house in Washington Park. It was her primary residence. She had lived there longer than anywhere else in her adult life. And despite everything, I understood what that house meant to her. In exchange, she accepted a significantly reduced claim on my business assets. She also agreed to a structure around Raymond's ongoing medical support that was time-limited and tapering. The responsibility would transition to a combination of Serena's own income and whatever support system she was able to build going forward. She signed the papers on a cold morning in March at a conference table in Daniel's office on 17th Street. I shook Karen Diaz's hand. I nodded to Serena. She nodded back. We did not hug. We did not cry. We had already done our crying separately in private over the previous 8 months. But the story did not end with the divorce papers. I want to tell you what happened with Caleb Frost. During the proceedings, Serena had moved out of our house and into a rental in the Highlands neighborhood north of downtown. Caleb was still in Boulder. As far as I understood, they were still together, though she never mentioned him directly during the legal process. Our attorneys handled almost all communication. Serena and I spoke directly only a handful of times. About 4 months after the divorce was finalized, Linda called me. We still talked occasionally. She had been clear throughout the entire process that she considered me family, regardless of what her daughter had decided, and I appreciated that more than I knew how to say. That day, Linda's voice was careful. I thought you should know, she said. Caleb isn't in the picture anymore. I did not feel vindicated. I want to be clear about that. I did not pump my fist. I did not smile. I did not feel like I had won. I felt something closer to sadness. Not for myself exactly, for Serena. She had traded 12 years of real life for something that turned out to be 6 months of retreat weekend energy. Is she okay? I asked. She's figuring things out, Linda said. Raymond is doing better. The new coverage structure is working. There was a pause. Then she added, she asks about you sometimes. What does she ask? Whether you're okay. Whether you're angry with her. I stood there in my apartment in the Baker neighborhood of Denver, a 2-bedroom on Bannock Street I had furnished simply and quietly. On clear mornings, I could see the mountains. I thought about anger. Then I said, tell her I'm not angry. Tell her I hope she finds what she's looking for. And I meant both parts. I am going to tell you what I think the actual point of this story is because I have been circling it for a while and I want to land it clearly. When Serena said Caleb did not care about money, when she said he was genuine and not like me, she was making an argument a lot of people make without fully understanding what they are saying. The argument is that caring about financial reality is somehow less spiritual, less authentic, less romantic than pretending financial reality does not exist. Caleb did not care about money. That is a fine philosophical position if you are 23 years old with no obligations. It is a much more complicated position when you are a 37-year-old woman with a father on dialysis, a mortgage, and a husband whose income has been subsidizing your entire adult life for 12 years. Not caring about money when someone else is covering all the money is not a virtue. It is a luxury, and luxuries depend on someone, somewhere doing the unglamorous work. Someone has to make sure the bills are paid. Someone has to make sure the insurance is active. Someone has to make sure the mortgage clears. Someone has to make sure the medical expenses are covered. Someone has to make sure the lights stay on. For 12 years, I was that someone. I do not say that because I want a medal. I say it because there is a version of this story. The version Serena had told herself, and probably told Caleb during their daily conversations, where I was the obstacle to her authentic life. The financially obsessed husband, the spreadsheet man, the practical man, the man who did not understand what really mattered. And maybe to her, in that version, leaving me for someone who did not care about money felt like freedom. What she discovered eventually is what I already knew. Freedom has infrastructure. The retreat from obligation is funded by someone's obligation. And the man in Boulder who lived lightly had no intention of weighing himself down with someone else's father's medical bills. I do not tell you that to be harsh about her. I tell you because I think it matters. The most dangerous lie in a marriage is not always the infidelity. Sometimes the most dangerous lie is the story you tell yourself about who is responsible for what. Because when that story falls apart, when the credit line is closed, when the automatic payment is suspended, when the phone call from your mother comes in, you find out very quickly what was real and what was philosophy. Now it has been 2 years since the divorce. I am sitting in my apartment on Bannock Street writing this down, and I want to give you the honest picture of where things stand. My practice is doing well. Last spring, we moved into a larger office on 16th Street Mall. We have 11 advisors, a full operations team, and a client base that grew 30% in the last fiscal year. I work hard. I still work hard. That is who I am. I have been on a handful of dates. Nothing serious yet. I am in no rush. After 12 years of building a life with someone, I have found it genuinely useful to spend some time understanding what I actually want from the next chapter, without the noise of a relationship that had stopped working. Raymond Caldwell is still alive. The new coverage structure is holding. Last year, I donated to a kidney disease foundation in his name anonymously. I do not know if Serena knows. I think about her sometimes, not with bitterness, just with that particular feeling you get when you look back at something that was real complicated, meaningful, and ultimately not meant to last. 12 years is not nothing. The house in Washington Park is not nothing. The garden along the front walkway is not nothing. The couch from South Broadway is not nothing. The Breckenridge wedding is not nothing. The life we built was not nothing. But you cannot build a future on someone's version of you that was never quite accurate. And when someone decides you are the obstacle to their authentic self, the kindest thing you can do for both of you is stop being in the way. Serena wanted to find herself. I hope she did. I found myself in the process too. It turns out, the man who kept the spreadsheets, paid the bills, managed the accounts, asked the practical questions, and watched the financial structure no one else wanted to think about was never the villain of the story. He was just the one doing the work that made the story possible. And when I stopped doing that work for someone who did not see it, I redirected it toward building something of my own. That, I think, is the ending worth telling.